Hi there. If you don't know me, my name is Gammy, and I tend to record in places that are extremely loud because I can't find anywhere to record because I don't live alone and I experience late stage capitalism like everybody else. But if you don't mind the noise, hi, here I am. Today's video is going to be, again, a little bit different. All of mine are a little different. I try to do something different in every video, hopefully. But in this video, I want to talk about why I chose the French horn as a main instrument. Now, this is kind of a strange reason, but I will say you do get a little bit more scholarship money as a brass player if you're a horn player. That's just how it is. And it did benefit me when I went 2 years to a private Pentecostal university. But nevertheless, I chose this instrument also for many other reasons. I've always been kind of curious about the horn in the way that it sounds and everything. So, for context, I started out as a trumpet player when I was like 11, and my dad guided me on the basics. I knew how to play maybe an octave, had an okay sound, typical student sound. And then I learned the euphonium, which was kind of boring, and then I switched to trombone at the age of 13. And at 13, I kept on playing the trombone throughout high school until my senior year. And that's when I picked this instrument up. I was, well, not this exact one, but there were some horns. They weren't being played at the school, and the French horns were they were not loud. They were not very brassy. That brassy sound from the horn is something that's very unique to it. Yes, it sounds a little bit like a trombone, but at the same time, it has a more unique sound. Now, it kind of leads me to the next reason on why I chose the horn, and it is the sound that it produces. When you play the horn, it's a very soft, mellow sound, and it's something that you don't really expect from a brass player, hence why it's been included in woodwind quintets. And when you play the horn, you have this power of having a drone all over the instruments, even over the instruments that it's playing with. There's examples of it in, I guess, the symphonies that I've played and that I've recorded here as well. And it really does shine even when it has the darkest of its sound, if that makes sense. I also like it because it sounds the most similar to a sine wave. And I love the sine wave for what it is. You can do so much with a sine wave. You can start out with a sine wave and start editing and making it sound different with music production and all of that. And I've always been interested in music production. So, as a horn player, you have this soft classical Mozart sound. You can have a very light, delicate sound where you can almost play with the idea of, even, like, this is why I love music in general, is because it also plays with the idea of gender. It plays with the idea of even just human behavior. And a horn player is very unique because, yes, we have a reputation of being kind of eccentric, the long haired men as well. And we also tend to just be ourselves. And that's something that I really, really liked within the culture of horn players. It's that people really express themselves in their own ways, and it does reflect in their playing. I am a louder French horn player. I actually liked to play in wind symphonies for the most part. I love Japanese composers and like Masanori Taruya and Mingqingdu, with especially the Festival Overture. It's a very nice piece. And you can tell that like there's different sounds for everything. There's a symphony that we're playing soon. It's the fourth of Mahler's Fourth Symphony, and there's a lot of different effects that you can do with the horn. We have a lot of stop horn, and we have this. The stop horn is a very good effect for um, something tectonic, like not a tectonic sound, but like a reflection of it. It's a buzz. It's a buzzing sound that, and there's certain buzzing sounds that really get people disturbed. Like for example, "The Flies" in Ptolemaea by Ethel Cain. It's a very horrifying and gross sound, but it belongs there. And the horn can also depict something like that. You can, when you hear music from like the 50s and the 60s, especially all these creepy haunted house movies and all of that, you do hear the stop horn. There's a lot of variety in the way that the horn sounds. Yes, brass players have mutes and everything, and you use mutes in several symphonies and a lot of impressionist music. But in general, I am just very glad that the horn can have, it can identify as more than just one sound. And despite that, its main sound is something that I identify with, something very smooth and mellow, and something that can, chill people out. It's almost like a singing bowl, if you've heard them. And also, like the brass equivalent of when you when you dip your fingers in water and you rub a glass and you make that vibration, that those ambient sounds, it's something hypnotic, and it's something again, it's even more variety. When something is smooth like that, it can blend in. A word that was used a lot by another horn player that I played with in a band in college was, "We need to blend." It was a very southern accent. She had a southern accent, but "we need to blend." And like, yes, we do need to blend, but there's also moments in which we stick out. There's moments in which we do not sound as smooth as a saxophone when they are playing in a more piano dynamic. And there's also times where we have to sound, if not louder than trombones. All of that exists. Like there's a piece called "New Century Dawn" by Gillingham, if you listen to Gillingham. And there's this part of the horns where they just stick out completely over everything, and even the trombones, they fill in some of the sound that's missing there right before the horns play. So the horns have this very historically cultural sound as well. It's always the horn call, and the most. Also, I want to argue about the Siegfried horn call video that kind of became viral back in 2006, 7, about of the girl going into like a big chapel or something, a very beautiful, large, echoey building with a lot of reverberation. And just, it's also really interesting. That's another thing about the horn, that when you play in a place that is echoey, you can really blend the sound together. You can also play with the acoustics. And it's also its weakness, I will admit. The biggest weakness of a French horn is the acoustics. When we're in rehearsal, we do not sound like the way we want to. When we're in a cathedral, we have a completely different sound than we do in, let's say, a modern church with a lot of foam and insulation. That was something that we had to struggle to play against whenever I was in the symphonic band of that Pentecostal university. When we played at a church, there was always the problem of, where do we put the horns? The horns were also positioned in a completely different place. It did not help us. It did not help us in any way whatsoever. So the French horn has a lot of weaknesses, but also when you get to the strengths, it shines. It really does shine. And it really has a very neutral sound. It transcends gender. It really does, because if you look at it, if you've ever seen the Fuchs scale, the French horn is smack dab right in the middle. And it's very impressive to me that something like a wind instrument can portray gender stereotype. And it's something that you never really see. Like the clarinet is also kind of gender neutral, but it's always the gay men playing the clarinet, but whatever. And anybody can play whatever instrument. There's straight men that play the flute, you know, like there's a lot of variety. There's tiny little female tuba players that are probably 5'1", and they're blasting away. So that's also another reason why in general music just tends to, it transcends gender, it transcends stereotypes, it transcends a lot of different sounds that we associate with different occasions. We can have a very pastoral, soft sound, like we call Beethoven's Sixth, or we can have a more intense symphony that we are calling it very intentional, like Titan, like Mahler's First. Now, this isn't a video about how the philosophy of sound and all of that applies, but in general, with the French horn, I chose this instrument because it is able to do a lot more than what it's given. It's not just able to play in symphony orchestras. It's able to shine in brass choirs. It's able to blend in with synthesizers, which is something that I've rarely heard. Like, yes, you can have a trumpet. Yes, you can have a horn-like sound, but there is nothing like an actual French horn that can make that particular sound. So that is pretty much all I have to say about the French horn, even though there is more and more I could say off camera. But these are the reasons why I chose this instrument, and maybe it could inspire someone like you to pick this up, even at a later age. It's also, I will say, it's also a very good way to learn breath control. But that's for another video. All right, I will see you guys later. Goodbye.